I think it's very appropriate the way that this season is going. That in a day that saw one team score an overtime winner and finish with their player hitting the gritty in the Atlantic Division, the other game ending with a slap shot on an empty net and then turning into a post game scrum, which went to national media coverage that everybody has their own opinion about. In a day that's exciting for especially the Atlantic Division, the Sabres lose in one of probably the most dullest games of the season.
Absolute snooze fest. I was in attendance with JP. I appreciate the ticket and the attendees were great, but the game on the ice was not. It was really bad.
I said, even though you didn't have to pay for the tickets because there are season tickets, that I'll still give you a refund for having to bring you to watch that.
I
Um,
appreciate that. I'm waiting for that. I'm waiting for that
yeah,
invoice. Yeah, I'm waiting for
I'll
that to
give,
come in.
I'll send it over in a bit.
All right, sounds good.
I was happy you enjoyed the food, though. I was really concerned because I know like that's one of your
Man, I
biggest
always enjoy the
things.
food. That's just me. I could eat anything. All right.
Attendees are fired this year.
But they are. They're definitely A tier, possibly S tier. They were really good. And little blue cheese dipping sauce never fails either. And Sabre's home loss never fails either.
Yes, it never fails. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Sabre Roundtable. My name is Jonah,
I'm Christian.
JP.
and as always, we will be talking to you about everything Buffalo Sabres hockey and a little bit in the wider NHL, although, as I previously alluded to, the news sweeping across the NHL is really just one little incident, but we will get there when we get there. In any case, the Sabres only playing 2 games since the last time that we talked with one another. 2 regulation losses, both at home. They scored a combined 2 goals in 120 minutes of play. I mean, there's really not much to say about these games. I guess just to kind of get right into it, the Dallas game. There should have been more to talk about, but Jake Ottinger made sure that there wasn't. And then their next contest against the St. Louis Blues, there was truly really nothing much to talk about. In fact, if you want to really group these 2 games together, the Sabres really only scored 1 goal by themselves because the other one
Yeah,
was an own goal by the St. Louis Blues.
Yep. I mean, they
boring.
honestly, the Dallas game, they played really good. They were the better team. Um, they had what, like 40 something shots. They just could not get it by Andre. He played awesome. We got goalied. UPL had a good game, but he would definitely want back those 2 goals, especially the second one where, he stopped it, he had it, and then he lost it, and then gets shot across the crease and goes off one of the Dallas players' skates and goes in. So he definitely want it back, but UPL played 2 great games overall, and we have put up 1 goal to help that. So the Dallas game can't be upset about. St. Louis game you can definitely be upset about because that third period was one of the worst things I've watched all year.
I think they're turning into shot merchants. I think they tried to uh turn the ship in a different direction back to what they were trying to go after last year with their high flying offense and like switching things up mid-season usually doesn't work out the best because you're changing, you're overhauling what you worked on all off season. Um Now I think it's more or less just like try and get the puck to the net by any means necessary. And whether that be them making way too many passes to, find an open lane, which usually results in a turnover, which I saw so much on Saturday. Or it's just a really low quality chance, from the outside shot on net and it's an easy save and no one's in front to crash. And anytime there was a loose puck, I'd see two Blues right there, and then they get the puck out immediately. No one's cleaning up in front of the net. That can contribute to it too, but can't really put it on one thing. It's been so many things, so many things that have gone wrong. I don't even know where to begin, but that's a start.
It was definitely a point to be made by after the game, everybody, all that, whether it was Granado or any of the players were talking about, Okposo was talking about it specifically. There's just no, like, these last two games, you have seen kind of what Christian was talking about with them seemingly spamming point shots or shots from the outside. I mean, that's you can thrive off that, you can, but you do need some sort of traffic in front. You need guys going to the net, and they weren't doing that these past two games. I mean, you could almost argue they made it easy for both Binning, or it wasn't even Binnington, for both Ottinger and
I don't know who it was.
I was gonna say it was
I was
like
there the
no
whole
idea.
game. I don't know who that guy's name is.
No idea.
so. It's quantity is something, but you do kind of need to make it somewhat challenging, and they didn't, and that's why they only walked away with 2 goals out of these last 2 games. So, I mean, I would be very curious to know how many times they scored 2 goals or less in back-to-back games last season. It could not have been often, and in fact, this season it feels like it's very much an occurrence. It's just a good summation of the season. These 2 losses, it's just a continual. I don't know. This season just feels dead. Those are 2 games that just reek of a team that has nothing to it. I know we spent a ton of time last episode, myself included, saying, firstly, we wanted to see a final push to end the season, not off to a great start. And another thing I was talking about was how my perception of Don Granado could change if their just good 5-on-5 play kept going through this final stretch. And these 2 games really didn't give me much, because even in the Dallas game, I think you could argue maybe the numbers undersold how well the Sabres were playing. But, the expected goal contest, the Sabres only slightly came out ahead. I think for a good chunk of that game, Dallas was actually ahead. So, they were giving up just as much as they were given. So it's just 2 really unimpressive games and 2 frustrating games, but we've seen 1,000, what feels like 1,000 of these already this season.
It was definitely quantity over quality chances. We definitely had a lot of shots in the Dallas game, but that's not to say many of them are really quality chances. I'll say the only 2 people who really stood out to me these last 2 games, Cousins has been playing very good. Once again, snake bitten. And I'm not going to say Dahlin's been playing very good, but he's had like 4 or 5 point blank chances, and he just has not cashed in.
That's what he gets for scoring all those empty netters this season.
Yep.
He should have had a hat trick against the Dallas Stars. He was everywhere. Yep. Probably broke at least 3 sticks, just slamming stuff. He thought he was Bo Jackson at one point. He was trying to break it over his head.
Yeah. Cousins broke his stick the Saturday game too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he shattered it and he just threw it down the tunnel.
Yep. So frustration setting in, and even for the 2 players that are probably playing better than anybody else on our team right now, other than UPL, of course. And I'm glad we didn't bring this up. I'm glad that Christian finally got to see UPL in full force in person.
Yeah, I mean, cool. We still lost. Not putting that on him, but
per source, I hear that I did have a little birdie told me that you guys left the arena early.
No, okay.
This is true.
Okay. JP didn't tell me that he usually stays through the entire game all the way to the end. There's like 3 minutes left. Sabres give up a 2-on-1. They go down and score. 2.5 minutes left in the game. I just immediately go, all right, getting out of here. Stand up, and I start walking. And JP's like, all right. And he just stood up, and we walked down, and then we watched the rest of the game, like in the
in the
um
concourse.
in the concourse on the big screen. We just watched it count down, and then everyone started booing and fired off a few tweets, got in the car, and drove home.
Yep.
That's been a ritual for me,
But that's not on
especially
JP. That's on
especially
me. I
especially
left
that last
early.
part. Yeah, that sounds like a rage quit to me,
It
if I've
was,
ever
yeah. I
seen one.
do. I do
It
rage
it
quit.
definitely was. Right as they scored, he stood up and was like, "All right, let's go."
I left the Flyers game earlier this year, like with 9 minutes left in the third, but they were
Yeah.
down like 5 goals, and they got scored on again. And I was just like, I'm not dealing with this. And I just got up and I'm like, I'm getting out of here.
Was that the game where you were with your girlfriend and I was with mine?
Yeah, yeah.
See, Christian's a good man. He left early. I made my girlfriend suffer. We stayed till the very end.
Poor
That's the way
Kate.
that's the way it should be. I gotta say, I used to be much more like JP, but I think it's happened twice this season where I've just kind of dipped out. One of
I
those
used
being one of those being the 9-4 debacle, and another man. What was the other one? I think the Kraken game a few weeks ago. I left early. I was with my father that night. So I mean, it's become a norm. It stinks. I mean, at least the St. Louis game, at least it was close. I mean, that one's more funny because hey, they could have came back, but you knew they weren't.
Yeah.
They were
I
not.
used to always like to stay at least all the way through, and then I've just kind of become apathetic to it at a certain point. I'm like, I mean, I like going to games, and I was saying to JP at the game, I'm like, no matter how bad this team is, nothing beats the atmosphere of being at an NHL hockey game, even if the arena is three-quarters full or whatever. But it's still a great time. But like, I've gotten to a point where if they're just gonna, lay egg after egg, and you're in such a long drought, and you just had bad team after bad team, even like diehard fans like myself, where I'm just like I don't deserve to be wasting my time here. It's like like obviously I got the tickets from you guys when I went, but like other times I go, I buy the ticket and I go, and I'm just like then I end up sitting there and we're down 5 goals, and I'm like, why did I just spend my money to come here?
Mm-hmm.
It's common sentiment this year.
We talk so highly about last year, and everyone's like, oh man, I wish we still had like last year's team. It's like last year's team was so good. We still missed the playoffs. Have we fallen this far? Are the expectations this low to where we already look back on last year's team as like an amazing year?
Because it's the best. It's literally the best team that we can remember. It's the best team in the last 13 years.
Probably, yeah.
As someone who really, as someone who did not experience '05 through '07, it's kind of I never really got that because I didn't experience it, and I get a taste of that. I get a small little taste. I get like a 2 week window where I'm thinking, okay, maybe we can make the playoffs. Now I get it. Now I get why 17 years later we're still talking about those seasons.
I can't believe I'm the only one in this crew we got here that like remembers a time because Jonah, obviously you were like
I
a
was 3 years old.
a
Three,
small child,
yes.
and I don't think JP was a big fan at the time, but my dad, like from when I was like probably when I was 3, like my dad put me in skates and everything, and I would always watch the games like every night. And, like I'd have like these little like flash moments in my brain of like them blowing out a team, like they destroyed the Capitals one night when they were still wearing their old like brown and uh brown and blue jerseys. And there was another night where they just like ran up the score on the Thrashers. I think it was like 10-1. Like I have those little like snapshots in my head. Like I don't remember the playoffs as much. I do remember the Rangers series because we watched it at like I can't remember. It was like a local spot. I think it was like a church or something. They had like a big like jumbotron in there. Um or like a big green like a screen, like one of those dry erase screens or whatever, but it's like
What
massive.
what church are you going to that's a jumbotron?
No, it wasn't a jumbotron. But I remember watching it on that, and I had to be what, 6, 7 years old. That was probably it. But I still remember that. It was cool, but like you don't appreciate it as much when you're that young.
Those 10 a.m. masses must have been crazy. Priest
No,
walks out.
it was a family. It
Everybody's
was
cheering.
it was a family friends church, so it was just us there.
To kind of go back to leaving the arena early, one of my first Sabres memories, I think it was 2009. It was the winter of 2009. And it was the first Sabres game. It wasn't my first ever, but it was the first one I vividly remember. And they were facing the Penguins. And they had just, I think that was their first time in Buffalo since winning the Cup. So obviously it's a big game. And the Sabres went down 3-0 in the first period. Ryan Miller gets booted. I remember they showed on the Jumbotron him freaking out as he's going down the hallway, throwing all of his equipment. They put Patty Lalime in there. And I think even at the time, I had a somewhat, I somewhat recognized that this guy was a scrub. And I tried to urge my mother, who had taken me there, that we need to get out of there. And she was like, no, we're going to stay. We're going to stay. You never know what happens. And I'll never forget Patty Lalime. I think it might have been it probably was a legacy game. One of the best goaltending performances I've ever seen live. Drew Stafford had 2 goals. Pominville scored. Gaustad scored. They rallied back. They beat him 4-3. I'll never forget that. So that's why you never leave the arena early.
Patty Lalime legacy, unless there's 8 minutes left and they're down 7-1
or 9-4.
Whatever.
All right, I think we've done enough reminiscing about games that are over a decade old.
That we barely remember.
That would be.
Yep.
I guess because those 2 games were so uneventful, the main course of this episode is gonna be mostly centered around trade rumors because we're less than a month away from the NHL trade deadline, and the Sabres are seemingly one of the main teams to watch going on here. For multiple reasons, they have pretty high profile name, obviously, in Casey Middlestat. Not that he's gonna move, not that insiders think he's gonna move, but he's just one of the better players in the league, and given the year he's having, he's just gonna draw interest. And overall, the Sabres as a whole, a few nights ago, they're one of the main points on Elliot Friedman at intermission during Hockey Night in Canada, saying that they're looking for help now. And you've seemingly gotten a lot of talk recently that they're in the kind of the main mix of things. So there's a lot of rumors going around right now. And I guess we could kind of break down, because there's 3 parties kind of contributing to all of this. You've got our friends over at After the Whistle, Andrew Peters and Craig Rivet. They broke some of their own. They've been hearing some stuff. Then you had the fourth period kind of making waves the other day. And then obviously Elliot Friedman he's been giving the Sabres some attention, both on the 32 Thoughts podcast, in his written 32 Thoughts, and then obviously in the aforementioned Hockey Night in Canada intermission report. So I think we can kind of just jump into Elliot Friedman's, because I would say that's the most reputable. As I previously mentioned, he goes on Hockey Night in Canada only for about 20 seconds. He talks about the Sabres, but it's pretty clear. He was pretty direct into what's going on inside the organization. They're looking for help now. It's not that they're not looking to sell off, and it's not that I don't even know if you can't say they're waving the white flag or not waving the white flag. They want some reinforcements, and that's what he kind of was communicating during that segment.
What the hell are they looking for now? The season's already over. Like, why are we? We need help now. Now is not even. It's not even a possibility to make the playoffs. Like, what are we doing?
Well, what do you table as help now? Because you could look at it as like,
it's a great question.
The Sabres are a really young team and they're still developing, and you don't need the help, or is it Kevin Adams thinks this core is good to go, they just need something else?
Well, I think if you've listened to 32 Thoughts, the podcast, when he talks about the Sabres, because one of the main points we'll kind of get to later is that Kevin Adams knows and is starting to evaluate which prospects are going to stay and which he's going to use to upgrade the team. And when Friedman talks about that sort of subject, he sort of uses the language that they're looking for veterans. They're looking to get older and not, not mid 30s older, but they're looking to get more established players in that lineup. So I think by help now, at least older, I think I would go by.
I mean, this is expected. This is what we thought was going to happen. You're not going to, all these prospects that you have, not all of them are going to play for the team. You got to package some of them to get some more established hockey players into your current lineup. Because if you just keep, this is how the last core kind of failed. They never built around them properly. If you let this core just, you know, keep riding it out and have them carry the bulk of the weight and everything, it's not going to work. It's not. You need to have talent around them. You need to have talent at every point in your team. You can't expect all of these guys to elevate everyone else on the team. You just need established guys, and this is what you have these prospects for. You have a few of them, a few untouchables, but you can't be beggars can't be choosers now. This team isn't good. They need all the help they can get. Almost everyone should be on the table here.
I just feel like when I hear help now, that means like trade for players now. Like it's not like he said, they're looking for help now and for players who will help them, in the next year and in the future. He said help now. Like that's what concerns me. Like if we go and trade for a rental, like what are we
We're
doing?
not we're not going for a rental.
But he
There's
said help
if
now. That
if
that's why I'm confused. I
I'm
just
I'm still looking at help now as in like within this calendar year. Like help now as in like we need to get established guys in this system going into the end of the season for a strong push and into next year. I'm not looking trust me, if he picks up a rental, just wastes an asset and picks up a rental, then I'd question why he's the GM.
I mean, I know what you mean. Like, question he's like, if he's just throwing assets away, but how many players with term move at the deadline? It's usually not many. And how many players with term move to a team that's not even in the playoff race? It's not often.
You might have
nah.
to overpay.
And that's that. I think that's the worrying part. I like if Kevin Adams trades a fourth round pick to the Boston Bruins for Matt Grzelcyk, I guess that's kind of throwing an asset away, but it's not make or break. One of the things I worry about here, because they've been talking about finally moving some of the prospects, is if we see a panic move. Like I'll say right now, I'm terrified. I don't think they're going to do it, but I am terrified if they go out and get a player like Noah Hannafin, a pending UFA. He rejected a contract from the Calgary Flames, seemingly around $50 million. So you're talking about a 7x7 plus. Like that scares me. That's not like that's the type of move I don't want to see. I try to keep myself big picture with the team. I try to think about this logically. Like if you think about it, we've had 160 games of good from this team, or somewhat good. Like 160 games of this team going according to plan, dating back to the fall of 2021. This season, now you're having 50 games of bad. So what do you weigh more? Do you weigh the 160 or do you weigh the 50? And I'm not saying that the 50 doesn't mean nothing, but my point would be like I don't want to start dealing prospects out of desperation. I don't want to see that. Now, if there's a big move, if you can go and get um I don't have any names that come to mind, but like if they doubt Yuri Kulik or Matthew Savoy to get Jake Gensel and then immediately lock him up for like an 8x8 contract, like I mean I'll try to get excited for it, but then that feels like to me like you're going for this big fish who's getting older and giving him big money because you're slipping out of the standings. I don't know if that would be smart. I guess is what I'm getting at.
Oh yeah, those are valid points, and that's what a good GM should recognize is, what is desperation and what is, a good deal. And what I want to see is You know what? I don't know what I want to see. I want to see
A pulse.
well, yeah, obviously I want to see a pulse. But I'm also concerned that the pulse in the front office is going to be another conditional seventh for player named X fringe AHL. Um, no, I don't want to see a desperation move. I don't want to see a rental, but if the price is right for, a solid guy who's maybe in his late 20s and you can get him for a few years, an established guy, not a gamble, not a Connor Clifton, something like that. That's what I want to see. Because I know we always say like you don't want to get someone who's getting older, but you need some older guys on the team. You can't have a team full of 23-year-olds. You need some more, you know, established guys who've been around the block.
I don't know. I mean, unless someone's name goes on the block, in this last month before the trade deadline, I'm not even sure I see the point in making a big move because I don't think it'll be worth it. Like I don't know who's going to be available in the offseason. No one knows completely, but I'm sure there's going to be better names than there probably are right now. The NHL, there's usually not many big trades. So at this point, sell all the assets you can. That means, supposedly Okposo and Gergensons. Gergensons like a C. Okposo, I can't see at all. I can't see him wanting out. Obviously Johnson, Victor Olofsson's getting some sort of interest. Um, if you could get any sort of assets for any of those, then you could use those assets in the offseason. Like that's all I'm looking for now. I don't think there's any big move to be made.
Yeah, I think with this deadline, I kind of like. I don't know if it's realistic, but I kind of want to see a fire sale of the UFAs. Trade Johnson, trade Olofsson, trade Gergensons. Jesus, give that guy a chance to win. And Okposo, look, if he wants to go and try and win a cup, hey, you know what? More power to him. If a team like the New York Rangers call, or I don't know, the Islanders, if he wants to go back, I'd imagine he wouldn't want to leave New York. But if there's a contender calling and he wants to give it a shot, then do it. Just I don't want to say send a message to the team, but like you just gotta do something.
I
I
think
like I don't want to see a 2020 deadline trading fifth round pick
Evan,
for Wayne Simmons,
hmm,
trading roster players for 2 months of, or not even 2 months, like a month of Dominic Cahoon. I mean, he didn't know the world was gonna stop, but that's what it amounted to. It amounted to like 5 games. It's tough because inside of you want trades. That's probably the best part of the sport off the ice. You always get a little bit of juices running through you when you see that notification. But you don't want to see a move just for a move. You don't want to see assets just pissed away. But I would not be surprised if we do see one of the big four remaining prospects dealt. Whether that's, I mean, it's probably not going to be Kulik. Probably Savoy seems like an off-season move. I guess I just wouldn't be surprised if you see a few names move. At least, or not a few names, but at least one of the big names move.
hmm
I
Yeah,
think it
and
would have to be Roseanne.
maybe.
Roseanne, like
Roseanne, one of the second
it's
rounders. Maybe you see
yeah.
Paul dealt. Someone. I wouldn't be surprised if you finally saw it.
I mean, going back to what you said about sending the team a message, I don't think this team needs any more messages. I think they understand it. I think they know what's going on. It's like there's nothing left to say here.
Yeah.
I think
It's
I
some.
think that's a fair point, but the same thing, they still have like all their guys. I think they all still are all comfortable. And they know this season's gone to absolute crap, but they're still. I'm not saying they shouldn't have fun, but like this is they're comfortable with all their guys. Like I think you need to mix up the locker room and give them a different sort
Yeah.
of message.
Yeah, yeah,
I th-
Because there's not many messages left you could give. I'll say
right,
that.
exactly.
I think it. I think this season hopefully does serve as a wake up call. I don't know if you guys remember, or anybody listening, if you've been with us for about a year, well, less than a year, when they were beginning to close the season last year, and they lost those games in mid March, and I think it was when they had that 10-4 loss to Dallas at home. I think we recorded an episode right after. And I remember talking about this, talking about how that season was going, the way it was seemingly going to end, and how I was somewhat okay with it. Because if you look back to the summer of 2021, since the day that Risto and Reinhardt and Eichel, they all basically asked out in their locker cleanouts, everything's gone right. Like I'm talking about leading up to March of last year. You traded Risto for a haul. You traded Reinhardt for Levi and a first that would soon become Kulik. It didn't seem like it at the time, but it's worked out pretty well. Then you go and draft Owen Power, Isaac Roseanne, and suddenly the new rebuild is off. You head into the next season, 3-0 start. The league's pegging you as one of the worst teams in the league. You're not. Like you're not good, but you're not the worst team ever assembled. You finally get Eichel off the books in November of that year, and then the Vegas game comes. Everything switches on a dime. Suddenly the lineup is being injected with good talent. Like Tage Thompson becomes something out of nowhere. Middlestat got healthy that season. Dahlin turned a corner after the All-Star break. And then you had the end of that season where you had the Vegas game, you had the Heritage Classic, you had RJ night, you had the 4-0 comeback versus Chicago, you had winning for Owen Power's debut, RJ's last call. Like it was a nice, pretty perfect end to the season. You go into that summer, you don't do much, but you're trusting the youth because I didn't mention Jack Quinn was AHL Rookie of the Year. JJ Peterka has 70 his point per game as a 19-year-old. You go into last season, suddenly you're one of the best offenses in the NHL. Tage Thompson is now a franchise center. Rasmus Dahlin has a Norris caliber season. You're having guys have career years, and suddenly like the city's buying back in, and everything's going right. And then you hit that mid-March kind of, you trip and fall, and now you're rolling down the mountain, and seemingly this season is over in such just a brutal way. And I remember saying I was okay with that because it was the first time that core was going to disappoint, because everything to that point was really no expectations, but they were in that race and then they fumbled it. Now, obviously the season didn't end that way. They went on that, those last 2-3 weeks, they had a great finish. Missed by 1 point. Everybody's happy. Everybody still has optimism coming into the season. Well, now here we are. You're just not fun to watch anymore. You're not high up in the standings. You really have no good stories other than your goaltender. Even the Middlestat stuff is kind of, it's kind of glossed over the fact, or there's kind of a cloud hanging over the fact that he's an RFA and there's trade rumors. You really don't have any great stories. It has just been a train wreck from start to basically finish where we are right now. So I guess my point is, moving forward, I'm not totally I'm not upset with the idea of this season, that it was a step back for such a young team. It just, I think I would rather have that bad finish be last season than this season, because now, I mean, I don't want to say you're concerned, but the thoughts are in your head. Is Tage a flash in the pan? Is Dahlin actually a franchise defenseman? Is this just a sophomore slump for Owen Power? What's going on there? Is Don Granato, are we going to fire him? Like, you have all these questions because now it's a season of bad. So my point is like the disappointment that we were talking about, how this core, I think the core or the locker room, it probably does need a shakeup. But you would hope that this season is is a shakeup in and of itself. The good vibe. I mean, when's the last time you've heard about the Sabres' good vibes?
There haven't been
But
none this year.
there hasn't been any because they're not winning. So I hope that that's motivation enough. I hope that should be enough. If it was 3 months ago, them getting booed off the ice Saturday would be a headline. Now it's just commonplace. They're getting booed off the ice every home game. This is a
Business
common
as
occurrence.
usual.
So I hope they're sick of that to a degree. I really hope they are. I hope that the fact that Alex Tuck was getting calls made about him makes them upset that they think that guys like that are expendable because they shouldn't be.
No, yeah, they're not. They're not. But
So
yeah, just the fact that they are getting calls about him is just incredibly frustrating.
it's frustrating. I mean, it makes sense, right? Guy's only got 2 more years left on the deal. Like any team would love an Alex Tuck. It's frustrating that teams would even think that he's available. It's frustrating.
Hmm.
So to just kind of wrap up Friedman's notes, one of the things that him and Jeff Merrick were talking about on his podcast, more specifically Merrick, Scott Lawton was a name that they kind of talked about. It was mostly Merrick, just wondering if that was the type of player that the Sabres would go after, but I don't think he's a name they're going to go after at the deadline because it did come out a few days ago. He's going to go for a first round pick, which I don't want the Sabres going anywhere near. If that's a player they want to bring in the offseason, I can get on board. He's kind of been on the decline, but he's also like that type of player I can see them wanting to inject into their lineup. So something to keep an eye on there because, I mean, the fourth period, they connected Lawton to us as well today on their trade board, which, like I said, I don't think they're going to go anywhere near trading, but just a name to keep an eye on. And then the aforementioned Tuck phone call. Apparently, teams were calling about Tuck, but Buffalo's just essentially telling them to go away. It's not going to happen, as they should. I don't really have any interest in trading Alex Tuck. I'm not saying that he's like some untouchable, but there's just no point to it. Like,
No,
it's not going to happen.
You'd kill the vibes like nothing else. Like the vibes would be shot for a long time. And B, it's like he's a good player. It's like that's not the guy you want to be touching in this situation. It's like I can make a list for you of what I deem as expendable players and what I deem as untouchables. And I promise you that the list of expendable players would probably be longer than the untouchables, but Alex Tuck would be on my list of not moving on from.
And then Yuri Kulik. So Friedman, obviously, as we've been talking about a little bit, he thinks that some prospects will finally be on the move from the Sabres organization. He does not think Yuri Kulik is going to be one of those players.
Yeah, he's your most NHL ready prospect, other than maybe Roseanne, but I feel like Kulik brings a more, physical element to his game. When we drafted him, he looked like he was already like 26 years old. I don't know, Roseanne seems like kind of a player, that we have a lot of, and I haven't seen much of a flash from either of them. But in the time that they've both been in the organization, Roseanne obviously being in the organization longer, they're kind of in the same spot. And I feel like Kulik's ceiling is just a little bit higher. That could change, but as of right now, I think the big four prospects, Kulik, Osland, Savoy, Roseanne, I'd probably list them in order of from most probable to be traded to least would probably go Osland, Roseanne, Savoy, Kulik.
I don't know. I feel like that World Junior is kind of. I think that World Junior is going to kind of change perception a bit because I think he's a bit. I think he's a bit different than the other ones. I think he's not like like you say Roseanne. It feels like there's a player. He's a player they have a lot of. I don't have that same feeling about Osland. So. And it's also tough with I don't know.
I think we just haven't seen enough of Osland and Savoy.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, We'll see. I think Roseanne would be the first to go. I think
Hmm.
they kind of gave him his little stint this year and he didn't do much with it. So I would probably put him most likely, but we shall
Hmm.
see. We shall see. Moving on to what the fourth period had to say, they've also been talking a little Sabres. The one thing that did get circulated stemmed from the Sabres having an assistant GM at consecutive Boston Bruins games at TD Garden, which got David Pagnotta talking, and then the fourth period put out a piece theorizing what the interest would be. And one of the theories was that the Bruins might have some interest in Kyle Okposo and or Zemgus Girgensons. So that's definitely the first. Well, I'm not so surprising about Girgensons. He's always felt like a guy that a playoff contender could chase after, but Kyle Okposo being in there does kind of raise an eyebrow.
Yeah, that is surprising to me. I
I,
just I wouldn't think he would want to go anywhere else. I mean, that's just me, just because of his family. He loves Buffalo. But at the same time, this is probably it. So if he wants to try and go win a cup, then go for it. I was just surprised by that.
yeah, but also, it's like obviously I agree with you there that he probably doesn't want to go anywhere, but at the end of the day, this is a business, and if you're not winning games, I don't care who it is. It's like especially if it gets to a point where it's ridiculous and downright, it's disappointing and you shouldn't be in this position. Um, Anyone's on the table. I don't care if they're your captain. I don't care if they're, you know, and I feel like I'm kind of contradicting myself here with what I said with the list of untouchables and um, players that could be dealt. But what I'm trying to say is like anything is possible. And Kyle Oposo means a lot to this organization, and he has for a long time. But it's like, listen, it's like when the going gets tough, you know, some tough decisions get made.
Yeah, I would think they give Okposo benefit of the doubt in that situation. Like they're gonna approach him about a trade. I don't think it's gonna. That would be something if they just kind of did it cold heartedly. Um, I think Gergenson's definitely. I think he would be the one to move. Although something that interestingly Friedman was talking about today, he was talking about Boone Jenner and the Blue Jackets. How he's just Boone Jenner is always a guy that their ownership group has always kind of liked, and a comparable that he used was that Terry Pagula has always loved Gergensons, him as a player and him as a person. And it's probably why he's stuck around for so long. So even Gergensons to a degree, it's almost kind of like I would be like, especially after hearing that today, it was kind of like, okay, maybe it would be kind of surprising if they did make that move.
Everybody loves the Big Z. Who doesn't like the Big Z? He's a good guy, and he's stuck by us for a long time. And you know what? It probably out of anyone on this team, him going would probably make me the most sad because I pictured him,
Raising
on
the
the
Stanley Cup.
uh, right. I pictured him when this team made the playoffs. I pictured him on the fourth line, and when he re-signed in the offseason, I was extremely excited about it because I know what he brings. You know what he
Eh,
brings.
extremely excited.
No,
I seem to recall
I
JP.
I didn't want Oposo back,
JP. I seem to
but
recall a
I was
much
fine with
different
Girgensons
tone back
back.
in the summer. Back me up here, JP.
Yeah, I'm not so
Someone
sure about this. I,
someone
I I
find the
feel like
tape.
you'd be more upset to your core once Olafson finally goes.
Right. The guy who hasn't played in 5 games.
No, I mean that genuinely, because you liked him so much.
Yeah, I mean, it's like,
It's a changing of an era.
yeah, I mean, he's probably the last guy other than Middlestat left of like you know, the 2010s second core or rebuild core. But
Some other news from the fourth period today. They updated their trade board and had the Sabres connected to Capo Caco, Elvis Merzinklins, Scott Lawton, and John Gibson. I always take these with a grain of salt. I feel like the fourth period kind of loosely throws those around because I think there's kind of a loose definition of what interest means. But it's something of note. Kako definitely raises an eyebrow for me. I feel like that kind of fits like what they're looking for. I mean, if you think about it, Capo Kako, not super young, but young enough to kind of come up with the core, has defensive upside, had 40 points last season. I think there could be something there, but in a buy low situation. Anyone else,
Yeah.
I'm really not interested in. I don't want to deal a first for Scott Lawton. Elvis Merzlikins, I don't even think he's a good goalie. And John Gibson, it kind of circulated thanks to Chad Didominicis on Twitter. He thinks that if John Gibson wanted to be in Buffalo, he would be here because we've heard his name in so many Sabres trade rumors for years now, going back to the Eichel saga 3 years ago, that if he would be on this team if he wanted to waive his no trade clause here.
Yeah.
So Kako is really the only one that it does kind of pique my interest a little bit.
Yeah, he's got some upside. Also, it's like probably be a good change of scenery for him. It'd also be really funny if he just came to the Sabres and he just turned into someone who's like pretty decent.
I was gonna say he's good, he's young, and it'd be hilarious. So
Yeah.
what's not to love from that type of
What's
move?
not to love?
And then we get to the interesting one. So after the whistle, Andrew Peters says that they went on their podcast. Peters said that he had heard that Casey Middlestat is being actively shopped and that they're also still looking for a goaltender. And one of the names that he used was John Gibson. So the Middlestat one did kind of it did kind of send some shockwaves because Friedman talked about it, Pagnota talked about it. They didn't necessarily, well, actually, I should say, Pagnota gave them some credit, saying that it was kind of like good reporting. But Friedman talked about it on 32 Thoughts today that he said the Sabres privately have been kind of pushing back on the idea that Middlestat's being actively shopped. And it was also the fourth period. They said that Middlestat, he would prefer to stay here. But obviously it has to be, he has to get the contract that he feels he deserves.
I'd prefer him to stay here too. I still believe that he's going to resign here. I don't believe, unless I'm going to say off chance, I'm going to say there's like a 20% chance he'll get dealt. And that's for, something you somewhat can't refuse. Like, it's something equal or at least better. It's like much better than what you're asking for. Especially for an RFA who, never know, could go to arbitration. I have no idea. But I believe that he's going to re-sign here. If we overpay for him a little bit, I think that's also very much on the table. But throughout the season, he's been your best player consistently throughout the entire season. He's been your best, I think by far your best puck possessor. I think he's worth giving a contract to. I don't want to get into another Reinhardt situation where, you think he's good, but he doesn't deserve the big money. We'll give him a prove it deal. And then it's a regime change, another prove it deal. And then all this nonsense. And then, sour taste and you go different, you go different ways.
The goalie one does shock me. And I'm
hmm
not gonna lie, I don't really believe any of those rumors because this is the first time since Ryan Miller we could say we actually have a goalie who's at least playing like a number one goalie consistently. And obviously Devin Levi is still, our probably going to be our top guy in the future. So I just don't see the merit in us looking for a goaltender at all right now
See,
because UPL is our guy right now, and I think Levi is going to be back up here next year.
that was my original train of thought. But then then I thought about it, and who's to say that just like if Levi spends the rest of the season in the AHL, is he really going to be ready after 35 games in the AHL or so? I'm not saying he won't be, but are you really going to try and run this back? Because goalies are voodoo. There's no question. What happens if UPL regresses? Then we're back to this season, only possibly in a worse spot. Like, who's to say that Levi is going to be ready next year? I mean, Dustin Wolf has not stuck around in Calgary quite yet. Yaroslav Askarov is still in the AHL for the Nashville Predators. These top goalie prospects, like they're getting, like, I mean, Connor Hellebuck, didn't he receive like over 100 games of AHL action, or at least I think one season of 50 plus starts? I'm not saying that you can't bring Levi up next year, but would it maybe be better off if you looked for a veteran option to pair with UPL for now and maybe just slow burn this?
Yeah.
And I'm not
I see
even
your point.
I'm not even saying that I believe those rumors by after the whistle, because I think, I mean, you kind of saw the Middlestat one, the Sabres immediately pushed back on that it kind of wasn't true. But the goalie one, I think it's something we're going to be talking about as we get to the offseason.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fair point. Fair point.
But yeah, it was a busy week of rumors with the Sabres, and given that there's only 3 to 4 weeks until the NHL trade deadline, I would not expect it to slow down. So we'll kind of see how that continues. Time for some NHL talk, but it's really just one topic making headlines everywhere. Guys, what did you think about Jake Wallman hitting the gritty after the overtime winner?
I didn't care. I thought it was cool. Whatever.
Yeah, I thought it was cool.
All right, well, that'll wrap up this episode. No, I'm just kidding. Obviously, the thing that everybody was talking about and still kind of talking about, Rielly Greig, Morgan Rielly, the Battle of Ontario is back. The Toronto Maple Leafs head to Ottawa. They're losing, I think it was 4-3 or 3-2 or so. They're down 1 goal. They're trying to fight back for a goal. There's about 30 seconds left. Puck gets cleared. Rielly Greig has just a clear breakaway. The game is sealed. He gets the bright idea. I'm going to take a slap shot from the hash marks into the empty net. And he does that. Morgan Rielly takes offense to it, goes up, gives him a nice cross check into the face. Scrum ensues, and then discourse ensues everywhere, all over at the NHL sphere. So, I mean, I have my take. I know I've shared it with you guys, but I guess what are your guys' thoughts on what's going on here?
I'll say this
go
wouldn't
ahead.
happen if they had Reeves on the Leafs. This would not happen.
Reeves is on the Leafs.
Exactly. I'll say I think it deserves a response, but cross-checking him in the head is just stupid, really stupid, and it crosses the line. Like, maybe if you want to drop the gloves right away, fine, or shove them against the boards, but I think it was taken way out of proportion by Rielly.
Here's my problem when you say drop the gloves. So when he takes a slap shot into the net, sure, it deserves a response. I personally am not, like, I saw some people on Twitter say like, oh, that's bum stuff. He shouldn't be doing that. He shouldn't be taking a slap shot. What's this? I'm like, cares. I don't. But if you're going up against that team and I was on that bench, I would I'd warrant it to be some sort of response. So you're trying to take fighting out of the game, and I get it. I get why you're trying to take fighting out of the game. There could be, correlation to concussions. Um, it is definitely unsafe, but it's like this is what happens when you do stuff like this. Like, players aren't going to drop the gloves as easily anymore. And then this happens. You get a cross check in the face, which is a good way to get a concussion pretty quickly. And then it looks terrible. It looks like weenie shit. It's just like soft. Like, if I was Morgan Rielly in that situation, there's no time left. Throw your gloves off and just, attack him, I guess. A, it looks cooler, and B, he probably would have gotten less of a suspension.
I'll say at the end of the day, if this is me, like it doesn't really bother me. The game's over. Like get over it. But at the same time,
Yeah.
I understand that a response is kind of warranted. But at the same time, like if just think about this isn't the same, but Cousins got take a big hit in a game that was already over by half the way, dropped his gloves and he gets hurt. Like a response doesn't lead to good things most of the time. Now Riley's gonna be suspended for 6 games. Like it usually does not lead to good things, and it does not send a message. It doesn't. People are still gonna do this crap.
Mm,
Like I don't think it. I think it's all overrated, but I do understand that a response can be warranted.
All
But
you're
I know
sending
Jonah's got a different experience because he experienced it in his own hockey game about 3 hours earlier.
yeah, this is actually really interesting. So this is going to be interesting because I feel like I tend to have like the less boomerish side of opinions. Um, basically, right now I'm still in college. I play club hockey, and it was really funny because 3 hours earlier, like this is mere hours before this incident happens. I'm playing a game, and it's like a pretty heated, like it's a close game. We're losing to this team. They get an empty netter, so the game's over. And I'll say this is a much different situation, but the game's over. They're up by two. We get a power play late at the end of the game. So it's actually funny. They ice the game with the empty netter, and the person who scored it goes by our bench, holds up his ear, kind of giving it to us. The refs gives him a penalty. So it's already getting heated. And we get the power play, don't do anything much with it. The buzzer sounds, puck goes out, and the puck goes out of the zone. And this one kid who had kind of been agitating us all game grabs the puck, looks at our empty net, like we pulled the net again, looks at the net, winds up, takes a slap shot into the empty net after the buzzer had sounded. Chaos ensued. One of my teammates comes flying off the like we all go at him, and he comes flying off the bench, flying elbow. This kid gets a stick to the he got a stick to the neck or so, and like chaos ensued. Their coach comes off the bench and is screaming their coach knew it was BS, and we didn't even shake hands. It was just a mess. And my point is that it's so funny because every single person knew what that kid was doing. You knew why he was doing it. It's to piss us off. It's basically raising a middle finger, and I don't think there's a single person on our team that regrets the response that we had, because I'll tell you what, that kid got up pretty slowly, and I don't think he's ever going to pull that BS again. And my point is that it's just funny. 2 hours later, the same thing happened in the NHL. And here's my take, because it is different. Ours, it was after the buzzer. I would say our game probably, it's dumb college kids, so it inevitably gets more heated. We're not millionaires. But Rielly Greig is an agitator. He plays like a very Brad Marchand-esque style. And it's the Battle of Ontario. Like that game got heated. The building is like 60, 70% Leafs fans. Rielly Greig gets that breakaway. There's nobody in sight. The game's over. And he looks behind him on the replay. He knows Morgan Rielly is nowhere near him. And he decides to take that slap shot. And I'll say right now, that is rock star shit. Because Rielly Greig is a rookie. All right, imagine Zach Benson does that against the Leafs. Goes in, takes a slap shot. I would be laughing my ass off.
Yep.
But
Yeah, I agree with you.
But Morgan Rielly coming over and doing what he did, I don't have a problem with it. I'll just say it. I really don't. Because I'll say it's one of those situations where I truly think like everybody knows why he shot that. But like, I'll ask you right now, why did Rielly Greig take a slap shot? Why did he do it?
He wanted to piss the Leafs off.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Why did he? And why would that piss the Leafs off? Well, because everybody knows. Like I know
it's just an unwritten rule.
I know some unwritten rules are dumb. Okay, I'm a baseball fan. I think the unwritten rule, oh, you shouldn't swing 3-0, or oh, you can't bat flip. Like those things are dumb. But I'll say this. There's a big difference between bat flipping, like people were making the joke about the Jose Batista bat flip. Look, that's game. That's in the ALCS, or it was in a play. It was the ALDS or so. He does that. Okay, imagine if you bat flipping when you're up like 12-0. Like then it's like, all right, well this guy's an asshole. That's what I mean. And like there's scales to this stuff. Like if you're Ridley Greig, okay, your team's in 28th place, and I get it. It's a heat contested. It's a tightly contested game. It's a heated bout. You're pissed off because there's fans from the city that are there, or there's fans from Toronto in the building. You go and you take that slap shot because guess what? You're raising the middle finger to those people. You're saying screw you, and you're saying screw you to the Leafs. But I can't. But that's why you did it, because you know it's going to piss people off. You know it's going to piss the Leafs off. So that's my point. Like it's Ridley Greig is not innocent in this situation. I'm not going to sit here and say that like some people are saying nothing he did was wrong, and I'm not saying what he did itself is wrong. Like I'm not saying he should get a penalty for taking a slap shot into the empty net. But for him to like he started skating back to the bench, like nothing had happened. Like he wasn't like it's almost like he wasn't expecting Rielly to do what he did. And another thing I was seeing was like really great. He was just pumped. He was just pumped to win that game. All right, well, you know what people do when they're pumped? They go and celebrate to like the fans. I watched Jack Eichel like dozens of times wave Leaf fans goodbye out of here when a game was sealed. Greig didn't do that. He took the slap shot and started skating back to the bench like nothing happened. Why? Because he knew it'd get under their skin. He knew it'd piss them off, and it did. I think Morgan Rielly should be suspended. I think you cannot take a cross check to the face and not have reparations for it. But I'll say this. I don't think Ridley Greig is ever going to pull that again. And I think that's the point of what Morgan Rielly did.
I think you're basically just agreeing with us.
No, I think it's different because you guys sort of like, well, you guys were kind of like all over Morgan Rielly, and I'm not. Like, I think he should get suspended. But like Sheldon Keefe was getting heat for saying that he thought the response was appropriate. I kind of agree, because I don't think Ridley Greig is ever going to do that again now.
No, I had no problem with them responding. I had no problem with Morgan Rielly responding. I just don't like it in the way that he did it. I think he should have dropped the gloves. He shouldn't have cross-checked them.
I guess that's where we disagree, because I don't think there's no guarantee Greig drops them in return.
Who cares? Who cares?
Well, because then, Rielly might not even get a punch in, because then he might wait. It might end in like I'm not saying he needed, but
he needed
did
time,
something,
is what you're saying?
He did something in an instant. He cross-checked him in the neck. It's wrong. It's dirty. But he's telling Ridley Greig, you're not going to ever do that again. Because everybody, it's the Leafs. Everybody laughs at them. We're laughing at the Ryan Reeves thing. You think you can just walk all over him. And Morgan Rielly did that because the guy took a slap shot into the empty net in a regular season game in February when his team is in 29th place. Like I don't, it's just, for me, it's like, I really have no problem with Morgan Rielly did. And like people are clowning, calling him a dirtbag. And like what he did was dirty, but I think it's one of those situations where you just had to have a response like that. An excessive response, because that was an excessive play by Greig.
Like like I said, I agree with everything you're saying, and I feel like we've been agreeing. The only issue I had was the way he responded, because personally, I just thought, like, for the reasons I already explained, like, I feel like I know it's like really like bang bang and it's so in the moment, but if he dropped the gloves, A, probably get a better shot in, B, less of a suspension, because you cross-check someone in the face. Not only is that like a penalty, I mean, fighting's a penalty too, but it's kind of its own thing. Not only is that a penalty, but that's egregious. You can mess a guy's face up bad with one of those carbon fiber sticks. And C, he drops the gloves and he hits him in the face a couple of times. That just looks gangster as shit, instead of you looking like a total wuss and using your little, your little stick as a weapon and hitting someone in the face with it. So
I
I
agree.
have
I agree with all that. I'm not saying Morgan Riley doesn't somewhat look like a wuss. I'm just saying, as someone who was very pissed off that I played in a game where someone did basically the exact same thing,
yeah,
you never want to have that happen again. And especially
correct.
in the
And
NHL,
I agree
they're going to
with
be
you.
playing each other 4 times a year. That could happen again where somebody takes a
Hmm.
slap shot into the
Yeah.
empty net.
No, I completely agree with you. I had no problem with Morgan Riley going after him. I just wish he did it in a different way.
Hmm. Okay.
I think it's kind of funny too.
Oh,
I
I
think it's
think it's
funny
hilarious.
going
I
up to
think
the
it's
end.
hilarious that like that's like his because the senator, like, I'll say this, like, the Senators have a serious case of little brother syndrome when it comes to their rivalry with the Leafs. Like, they hype those games up very much so. I think Buffalo used to be a lot, like, they were on that level when Eichel was here. I swear we hyped up those games like it was essentially like it was a playoff series. And Leafs fans who, they're rooting for playoff teams are like, well, we don't give a shit about this game.
Yeah.
I just think like it's getting a lot of heat for good reason. I mean, look at it, it's taking over national headlines. I don't think there's any scenario where I can agree that Ridley Greig is innocent here, and I've seen some of those. I'm not saying he shouldn't ever do it again. I'm just saying you cannot do that and not expect a response like that. Like going back to the Zach Benson example, if Zach Benson got cross-checked in the head by Morgan Riley, yeah, I'd be pissed. But I would be like, yeah, like, dude, you took a slap shot into an empty net in a regular season game. Like, what are you doing? I think it's funny, but like, to quote Major League, it's like, great F and play. Don't ever do it again.
Yeah. This is why I love unwritten rules. I know a lot of people hate them. I love them because it brings up so much discourse. I mean, especially in baseball, because me and Jonah are big baseball fans.
There's a lot more
But
there.
yeah, I like bringing them up. I like the discourse because everybody has a different opinion. Like my one unwritten rule that I believe in the MLB, but I know a lot of people don't, is that if the pitcher's throwing a perfect game or a no hitter, you should not bunt. I think that's horseshit. But I know most people say, hey, it's fair game. So that's why I love unwritten rules. Anybody has their own opinion, and it's going to bring up a ton of discourse. And this has brought, a lot of light to the NHL these last few days. So I think it's funny. I think the response is probably deserved, but a little extreme too.
And Morgan Riley will be receiving an in-person hearing, so that means his suspension will be more than 5 games. So it'll be interesting to see where the Department of Player Safety goes with that, because, I mean, yeah, we've had cases of cross checks to the face, but obviously this one is a bit different because you have to taking context into it. It does kind of make it interesting. How does the department take into an empty netter? How do they take that into the eventual ruling? All right, enough of me yapping about stuff that I'm sure people don't agree with. I think that's going to do it for this episode. The Sabres are back in action tomorrow. We're recording this on a Monday, so if you could be listening on a Tuesday, so that will be tonight. They face off against the LA Kings at 7. On Thursday, they're back at it at home against the Panthers. And then on Saturday, they face off against the Wild at 5 o'clock. So maybe we'll talk to that Sunday. Maybe not. Maybe we'll record after the Ducks game on Monday because that's at 12:30, so an early game there. But in any
Sounds like 3
case,
losses.
yeah, I mean the Kings kind of got their head coaching bump going right now. They've won a few. Panthers are obviously having a great year, and then you should beat the Wild and the Ducks, but they probably will not walk away with 2 wins there. But we shall see. We shall see.
We're almost there, guys. Don't worry,
Only
we're almost there.
30 games to go. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can follow us at the Sabre Report. Follow us on Instagram at the Sabre Report. Follow us on TikTok. Subscribe to us on YouTube. If you want updates for the pod, follow us at Sabre Report Pod. If you want to go give our friends over at the Buffalo Sports Talk podcast a listen, please do so. But other than that, I think that's going to do it for this installment. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for listening. Take care and go Sabres.
Go Sabres.
Screw the Chiefs. Go Sabres.